This is part 2 of the flower shop that we started on Wednesday. Well, let's take a look at where I got to in group 2. And if we want to show the perspective, which luckily I saved so that it will, I can just show the grid and it will remember my perspective from last time, but I did save it with a name. So this is the horizon line going about here. So if you were standing here, it should be approximately where the eyes of a tall person are. I just turned on the template layer and let's take a look at what we're going to do. So we're going to add the word flowers to the wall on a rectangle. And then there's a Hansel and Petal sign, which we'll make a support for. The trickiest part is making windows that we can see through with Pathfinder, and we'll add a potted plant, which is very easy. Finally, at the very end, if you want a bonus, I have some instructions for showing an awning, but I won't show you that in this video. If you want to see a video of it, I'll make another one. So let's do the flower sign. It's going to go here next to the, I think you can see it in the template, and right next to the seeds. And instead of sticking out like the seeds, we're going to put it flat on the wall. And you don't see what it looks like in this particular picture. By the way, this is my red brick version. It has a white stroke around it all, which will show up very nicely on whatever wall color I come up with. All right, I'm going to use, so this line is optional. It's actually part of the perspective of the other picture, but I mistook it for a line and I actually thought it looked kind of cool. So I left it there, the line, but you don't need, you probably want a stroke around, but not necessarily a line. So here we go. Let's go back to Illustrator. Let me zoom in a little bit on my flower sign. Let me make sure I'm in perspective. Yes, I see my perspective grid. And I can pick either one of these tools to get the rectangle to make my sign. And my sign is going to be the same blue I used for my bricks, which happened to be this particular blue. So the sign is flat on the right grid, so you need to have your right grid picked. If you have the left grid picked, you can either just click to the orange one or press number 1 to get the old one back and 3 to get the one we want. And then you're going to draw, now in slightly different perspective, a flat sign for the word flowers above the awning, because I am going to make that awning later. So if you want to make the sign a little higher, you can get your perspective selection tool. I like to click it. I always like to adjust with the middle handles. I find them a little bit more responsive. Okay, it's probably there. Slow response time on Zoom. Okay, words. Well, words don't go on with any grid, so I can pick no active grid. Even if I pick a grid, the words are not going to type with a grid, but I'll get my type tool and I'll type my words kind of on the sign so I can see how they're going to look against the blue. And I like all caps. And I didn't make a box around it because it's easier. If you have a feeling that the person might not have your font, when we're done, we can create type outlines. The one that Mel chose that I really liked, I think it was probably the one I chose, was just a marker felt. So I'm going to go with a wide marker felt and make it a bit bigger. This might work. And I like the idea of it being white. So Those are the words. They're not on the perspective of the wall, but we know how to do it. We activate the perspective selection tool. We hold on to them and we just pull them into place, pressing number 3, approximately where you want them. And if you want them to be a little taller, you can try to find the middle handle and pull up on it. I do love the middle handles. Okay, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to give my sign a white stroke that will show up later. You won't really see it now, but I think I'd like it to be at least 2 points, probably 2. And I'm going to put that line on because even though it's just part of the perspective, I thought it looked rather cool. So I'll go to where it says path and maybe hold shift. And it actually does not matter what grid I do it on, but I might as well do it on this grid, and I'll let go when I get to the bottom and it says path. And there's my line. Let's see how it's going to look by deselecting. If we want it a little thicker, I could try 3 points, but I think this is going to look good. Let's try 3. Looks good too. Okay, done. Now we're ready for the Hansel and Petal sign, not the one for the awning, that will come later, but instead of doing fresh flowers and seeds, the client decided they wanted the Hansel and Petal sign here. So once again, I'm going to go to no active grid because I'm going to do something, let's try to activate my perspective selection tool. There, I got it. It's a little less responsive in Zoom. All right, you're going to find this sign is rather huge because they were planning to put it here and I'm putting it here, but it's in your symbols. And we're going to drag it out and see how really huge it is. And you know what? It's going to get even bigger when I put it into perspective because it's going to be the perspective sticking out of the building. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shrink it a little bit with the regular selection tool from a diagonal corner, holding shift to keep I just know that it's going to be very big once it goes into perspective. So I'm shrinking it up kind of maybe a little bit bigger than it is. But don't worry, I'll be adjusting it. It will be bigger. Now the stroke around it. Well, if we double click the sign, it tells me I'm going to be editing it. And I don't want that black stroke. I want to have a gray stroke. And I was going to say I wanted a gray stroke of 3 points, but I have a feeling the stroke is not going to scale properly. So I think I'll go for 2 points. Instead of on the handout, you'll see it says 3. All right, here we go. We're going to open this up so I can find out where the stroke is. I suspect it's this thing down here called path. You can't really read the word, but I see the P. See, now the problem with the path is I want to keep the white part of the sign. So with this selected, I'm just going to take the stroke, the black stroke, and change it to a gray, a medium gray. And I was going to try around 2 points. Because as I told you, 3 looked. Now you notice the sign is bigger here. That's because we're editing it. But I think when I go back, so how do you go back? Well, you could click on a blank area of the whiteboard, the artboard, which is maybe here, or some people like to use these arrows up at the top on the control panel to get back. See, the sign is its usual size, and there it is. You think 2 points is big enough? It doesn't look bad. Maybe I could have gone to 3. I could do it again. This is my problem. I always change my mind. Okay, we'll try 3. And come back. Not sure if it took it or not, but here we go. we are ready to put it into perspective. So once again, I need the perspective selection tool. I need to hold on to the sign, but this time I'm going to be pressing 1 to make the widget go to the right grid. And see how much bigger it's getting? It's getting huge. That's what I told you. The sign really gets very big, very fast. I'm going to start it off so it's a little bit to the right of this bar-y thing that comes down. And I'm going to pull the corner in, holding shift maybe, until I think I'm at the bottom of it. And then I'm going to, it's cute like that, but I think I'll bring it in a little bit to match the picture. When I can see the edge of it, let me see where the edge of it is. Oh, it's not even there yet. Oh, here's the edge. So, and you notice it's too high up. So I'm going to bring it down a bit so that the support will show, because I'm going to draw that little support thing later. Okay, like it. It would have been a good idea for me to put this on a different layer, because I'm going to work on this window later, but it isn't really a problem at the moment. I am going to have a different layer in just a minute. So let's zoom in on the sign a little bit and give it some depth. Let's just take a look at the handout for the depth. So we brought our sign out. I changed my stroke color. I left the symbol editing mode. And with the right grid, the orange grid, I'm going to give it depth with a rectangle for the front of the sign. I found that I really couldn't see underneath the sign or on top of the sign because it was too close to eye level to see under it or on top of it. It was too close to where it was on the horizon, was not going to help. So here we go. Well, let's draw that and then we will be done. Except it will be time to move on to this hanger. And you can draw the hanger either with the circles in grids or with nothing on a grid. It will still look good because it's too small to have very much perspective. All right, I will pick my right grid for the depth. Oh, now I can really see that I have a thicker stroke here. That looks better. Get my rectangle tool, position it up to the top corner where I see the word anchor, pull sideways and down to the bottom. And you can see there is really no room for the bottom of the sign. If I drew it, you could draw a very tiny thing there, but seriously, no one will notice it's not there. I'll want a nice gray for that, maybe a bit lighter. Here we go, back to it looks pretty good. Let's turn off the template, and doesn't look bad at all. Okay, so now it's time for the support. So I'd like it to be about 3 points. I know already, I have a feeling, if not more. I'm going to start in the middle and come out, and then I can use the space bar and position it. It's just a little easier. Now, if I want to move this into perspective after I draw it, I could, but I think that'll look just fine. How about a darker gray though for it? I would say this wants a darker gray because it's going to, not the fill, the stroke. It doesn't want a fill. It wants only a stroke. So darker gray, so it'll show up on my wall better. Maybe even darker because it's almost iron. Okay, I like that color. Might even go darker. Next, I'll do the one at the bottom. I could even pull this one down to the bottom, but I think the bottom one looks a tiny bit smaller, so I'll go with the smaller look. Right, I'll start in the middle, holding Alt and Shift, and make it a tiny bit smaller. Look, it knows, and move it over slightly. And now, just to draw the line that attaches it, that's easy peasy. I'm actually going to use the line tool. And whether you use a grid or no grid, it actually doesn't matter. Just draw your line down for the side of the sign, to the support of the sign, and then you've done it. The last one is the pen tool support. So I'm going to get my pen tool. I think I'll start it here on the picture. Remember, I have no active grid, but the pen tool wouldn't draw with the grid. I make a direction line starting this way, and I don't actually want to hook it up with my first line. Maybe I'll lock my first line because it's going to want to hook onto it. Hang on. Okay, let's stop this here. Why am I doing that? Because I want to control the width better. So I will, select this and this and temporarily lock them. Okay, now back to my pen tool, which is very nice. It's drawing exactly the right size that I want. I just don't want it to attach to anything. I just want it to come into place. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I'm going, you know why? You might not know why. And I'm going to do Command click to deselect and end it because I want to give it a width profile. Now, to give it a width profile, I have to make sure I'm at basic here, which luckily I am. And then I can pick, I'm going to pick, I'm pretty lazy, so I'm going to pick something kind of pointy at both ends. Maybe this one would look good. Or or this one. That's not bad. Let's hide the template to see what it looks like. All right, so I was pretty happy with that one. So I'm going to go with it. All right, there we are. There's my support for the sign. I'll select this and send it to the back so it really goes behind the sign. I think that will work. Object, arrange, send to back. So I'm sending my support behind. So it looks a little nicer right there. All right, done. Next, let's look at the handout. So there's our sign, looking pretty good. Oh, this is the fun part. We're going to put a JPEG inside the Flowershop. Now, I spent a while looking for JPEGs that were in 2-point perspective that would look like they went into this particular building. You can't just use a 1-point perspective JPEG for your drawing. It isn't going to look that good. And unfortunately, some of these are a little tiny, so they'll look a little pixelated, but once we finish the drawing, nobody's going to really notice. If you don't like how pixelated they look, I'm going to show you in a future class how to turn a JPEG. We'll image trace the JPEG, and we'll make it into a symbol, and that way we can make it bigger without losing quality and without it being pixelated. But there's no reason to go through all that work for this one. I'm just going to make sure my right wall has no fill, which it doesn't yet. Remember, because I couldn't even see the flower sign. You can see it showing up with the stroke around it. Well, mine doesn't. Between the template layer and my walls, since I only have 2 layers, those are my only 2 layers, I'm going to make a new layer called interior, and I'm going to place one of those Flowershop interior JPEGs into it. And I'm going to embed it so that it will go with my picture and I don't have to remember where I have it on my computer and bring it with me to school, all that stuff. So here we go. This part is really fun, but you'll notice that the picture tends to come out of the building a little bit. See, this picture's coming out of the building, and you're going to want to not show anything but the part that is behind the the window, the big window, the fancy window, and the door in the middle. So we'll do that with a clipping mask. So this is not hard, actually, and we're going to get a great result from it. So I'll turn my template on, just so I know it's there. Make a layer above the template called interior, but below everything else, which seems to be only on my drawing layer. And by the way, I could lock that drawing layer temporarily so I don't interfere with it. So let me show the whole picture. I'm ready to place something. No active grid is always good when you're placing. See, zoom makes this very slow. Have a little delay. Let's look for my interiors, and I'll just take the first. I think the first one's very pretty. Here they are. This is the next one. That's kind of nice. And these are cute, but I will go with this one. I'll start it about here above this window. Now, don't forget, the wall is going to hide anything that goes into the rest of the building, but this is a tiny JPEG, as I warned you. My fault. I really wanted a bigger one, but I'm going to hold shift and make it bigger, but it has to be big enough to fill my windows. And I'll see if I like where I put it. Yeah, I don't mind where I put it, but if I want to, I could move it over. No, I think it's good there. Because I can walk in and I'll have this counter to my right. This is the door here. And then I'll have some space to walk into the flower shop. Yeah, I think that's a good location. But look, it's going to be sticking out of the building, this corner and this corner. Easy to fix. So this is how I fix it. I deselect. I actually go back to my grid, turn my grid back on, and pick the wall because I want to make a perspective shape for this. That a perspective rectangle will stay inside my window because it's going to be inside my windows and door, inside the building, basically. So here's the rectangle. I'll start a little bit above the window and go a little bit below the window. I have to make sure I'm low enough I'm not quite high enough for the top of I did well at the bottom and I'm still inside my building. So that's good, but let me give it a bright color so we can see where it is. See, I'm missing a little bit at the top of this window. So of course, the adjustment is your perspective selection tool. If I paid attention, I would have made it a little taller to begin with, but no, I didn't. So now we'll show enough. It doesn't matter if it goes into the flowers or the seeds. It's behind them. What we want is to make sure that every window and every door is covered with that look. And now I do this in no active grid, go back to no active grid, get my regular selection tool. First, I select the magenta kind of wall that I just made, mini wall, and then I shift click to get the picture where the wall isn't. And once you have two objects, you can go object, clipping mask, make, and you won't see that color anymore, which is why I always make it so garish. And here's your nice fitting image in the picture. Our next step is it's time for our wall. This was the hardest thing in class, but you know what? It's not going to take long. You'll watch it and you'll get it right. So we've done this. Now we're going to select the window, the big window, give it a white fill, copy it and paste it in front, hide one of them because we want to bring it back later So we have the white window, which we're going to make transparent, extremely transparent, and we want to keep the frame. If you just punch a hole in the wall with the window, you won't have your window frame anymore. You'll have to rebuild it, and I think this is faster and more accurate. So sometimes I do it the other way. Let's punch a hole through the window, and we're going to use Pathfinder with minus the front. Of course, we'll have to have a solid color for the wall, so that's my next step. All right, time for the solid color for the wall. Okay, here's the wall. Where is my wall? Is it locked? Oh, of course it's locked. Lock your interior and go on your drawing layer and get your wall back. And the color I want to give it is the color I was using, which was that color, but I want a paler version of it. See, it's exactly the same color as my sign. So to get a paler version of it, see if the color guide has some ideas for me. I love these monochromatic too. Let's see if I've got something in here that would be a nice, go well with my original blue. Here's more of a sky blue. And anything you like, just drag it into your swatches. There's one. There's a paler one. And an even paler one. Okay, I'm gonna try those. I kind of like that. Right. Okay, so I wanted a color that went with my bricks, and the color guide is helping me out on this, but was a bit lighter. I also wanted it to look good with the grays. So now we're ready to punch a hole in the windows. First, we're going to give it a white fill, as I mentioned. Then we're going to make a copy of it. Edit, copy, edit, paste in front, and we're going to hide one of the windows. Object, hide, selection. So we'll hide. So the other one is the one we can select. I like to do this with no active grid because Pathfinder is a little picky. I'll show you this. You select your window, you shift click to get the wall, you open your Pathfinder panel, and you pick minus the front. Now we have a hole where the window was. And now let me see what happens if I show my window now. Show all. Good. I mean, mind you, you can't see anything. Here's the tricky part. I want this to be transparent, but if I change the transparency here, I'm not going to have a strong black frame, which I would like to keep. So it's the appearance panel that I've been bugging you about. Don't touch the stroke, leave it at the default opacity, but click on the word opacity for the fill. And I like to bring this down like to around 20% so that we see through it. But if I had it at 0, the JPEG would be more vivid like it was originally. So in fact, I'll show you that. I'll go object, we'll hide the window, hide the selection. Okay, see how the JPEG is a little bit stronger. The tones are stronger. Now I'll show the window. Very good. So I'm going to do the same thing to the door. It's going to be very fast now. Give it a white fill. Oh, let's try giving it a white fill again, Jan. You did not succeed. Click harder. You go edit, edit, copy, edit, paste in front, object, hide, selection. So the one you can grab, you shift click the wall, you minus the front. And then we'll get our window back with show all. Well, now when we have our window back, this opacity, as things get further away from you, they become a little more desaturated. So I'm going to make this maybe 35% opacity or 30%. So it's a little less vivid than this 20% opacity here. So I go under the fill opacity and I'll try I could try 35. Let's see what 35 looks like. It looks a little fainter. Do you like that look? If you feel it's too faint, you can make it just 30. But I do think it's going to be it should be a little less vivid. There, that looks good too. All right, the trickiest one is this window. Number one, this window is a symbol. Number two, it's not very easy to draw. We can't really copy it and make the symbol take things out very well. Plus, I want to just have a symbol that fits inside it. So here's the trick for the oval window. We'll just take a little look ahead of time at the steps. And we've done the door. Here we are we did the door very similarly to the first window. We're going to duplicate this window, so that we can make another window that's just a plain bright blue. Now here's the problem in your handout. Remember I showed you that the fill actually had 70% opacity, just the fill. You're going to have to make sure you put it back to 100% opacity before you bring it out of the symbols panel. And we're going to take off the crossbars, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to remove the stroke around it. Then we'll be able to put it on top of the other window, lock that other window so it doesn't get punched a hole through. Select the window and the wall and punch your hole, and then we'll show the first window. The first window, remember, has that 70% opacity, so I like it to be more see-through. So when I get that window back, I'm going to go into editing the symbol again and making it have 50% opacity. In fact, all right, so let's go. Those are the window steps. Little tricky, but it works well. The first thing is you select your window in the symbols. You go to your symbol menu, you pick duplicate symbol. Now, you use the second symbol, the one you weren't using in your picture, double click it, and you can get rid of the crossbars. So I showed people that if you open this up, the crossbars are the top ones. I already got rid of one, or you can just try to grab them on the stage. That's fine. This one, we want to change the stroke to, I made it a blue color so it would be obvious to see. I seem to be into blue today, but let me make it, I want to make it a bright color like magenta so you can see. I don't know if you can tell, but this is got an opacity on it of 70%. I just want you to be aware of the opacity. And I'm taking off the stroke for this window so that I just have a pink window. Now remember, here's where we have to go back to the appearance panel, which luckily is showing us exactly the right things, and make this a vivid magenta or blue or green, whatever color you're using. Remember, this color is going to vanish because it's going to punch a hole in the wall. So we get out of this. Remember, there's two ways: double click on the white artboard or follow the arrow here. So I'll double click this time. Now I haven't brought this out anywhere. So now is my chance to actually bring it out. It might be a good idea to lock this guy right now so he doesn't get punched a hole through. Object, lock, selection. I don't think it would happen, but it does happen. It tries to sometimes. Move my thing almost into place, but remember, we've got to put it in with perspective. So we get the perspective selection tool, we click the right wall grid, the orange grid, and we move it just a little bit And with that perspective selection tool, pressing number 3. Oh, got very small. So as I told you, I love to pull out the middle handles, have it rest inside. I love the middle handles and have it go to the sides and the top. And once you've got it positioned, now here's the trick. This symbol actually needs to be expanded for Pathfinder to use it properly. Do I need to bring it over a little bit more? No, I liked it better like this. That sign is in the way. I'm going to hide my sign. I have to find it. Okay. Well, I guess it could go this sideways a little bit. Oh, that's better. Right, we've got it. We've got our hole in the wall. I can show the sign. Remember, I'm not dealing with the sign. Okay, if there's an extra step that I'm going to do this with no active grid. Select this, shift click the building, and do minus the front with Pathfinder. And it's going to give me a message that it has to expand my symbol first in order for this to work. So I could have done that ahead of time with object expand, except I never remember. So I just say, okay, and it will expand it for me. It just did. So now I can click it. I think they're both still selected. Shift click, click, shift click. Well, just making sure. And now I can get rid of it. And there it is, looking perfect. Now, it does look a little strange because everything's on top of my sign. By the way, I can unlock my other shape. But the trick now is to send this wall behind everything on its side. So object arrange, send it to the back, and it will go behind the sign, behind the windows, behind the stairs. Everything will look great. So basically, we're just about done. There's one step left to finishing up. This was the hardest thing. And we have, you'll see how good it's going to look in a minute. The last step is fun and easy and no worries for it. We're just going to go to the symbols library menu, Tiki, and find that potted plant and drag it somewhere in front of the store. That was the best plant I found. Don't put it into perspective. It doesn't look good in perspective. So, I mean, you can if you want to. A few people tried. So let me, here's the symbols panel. I look for Tiki, which has that cute cat and dog we used last time. And here's the potted plant. I suppose you could try the palm tree too, but I thought it would be very nice around here. I have it like it's so that when you're walking next to the stairs, it's so we have, remember, because they had potted plants outside, so I didn't want us to have to draw them. So there we go. That's it. So let me make it look good. We'll do, here's my brick I was using. I think if I do Command 0, it'll look perfect. And the last step, of course, is hide the template. So let me close up my top layer, hide the bottom layer, and deselect everything. Whoops. Deselect everything and hide the grid. Command Shift I is my little shortcut. So there we go. I have a really pretty blue one. So good luck with this. Now, if you guys want to do an awning, there are awnings in the original template. So let's just take a look at the template for a second. See, there's this Hansel and Petal awning. And I have instructions in the handout for how to do that. But it's just for a bonus, so it's not in this lecture and you do not have to do it. Enjoy.